Hey, you can't just stop here. Show me your ID. You're acting suspicious. You. Really want to see my ID? Check the title below my name. Mr. Mayor? He thought he was stopping a suspect. He just tried to arrest the mayor himself. The late afternoon sun burned through the windshield as Darius Cole steered his sleek black sedan along Highway 19, heading back to Brookhaven City Hall after a long meeting in the neighboring county. He loosened his tie, exhaled, and turned up the radio just enough to drown out the sound of the wind. Politics was a never-ending grind, but he believed in service, in helping people who looked like him finally see leadership that reflected their voices. The road stretched wide and quiet, until flashing red and blue lights filled his rearview mirror. Darius frowned. He'd been driving under the limit. There was no broken taillight, no erratic movement. Still, he signaled and pulled over smoothly onto the shoulder. He rolled down his window and waited, both hands visible on the steering wheel. 2 police officers stepped out of their patrol car. The lead officer, Sergeant Brennan, mid-40s, square jaw, the kind of man who wore authority like armor, approached with deliberate suspicion. His partner, Officer Miller, flanked the passenger side, one hand resting near his holster. "Afternoon," Officer Darius said calmly, voice steady. Brennan didn't return the courtesy. "License and registration, of course." Darius reached slowly for his wallet, keeping his movements exaggerated and clear. "May I ask what this is about?" "You'll find out soon enough," Brennan muttered, eyes scanning Darius's suit and tie as though the professionalism itself was suspicious. "You in a hurry to somewhere, sir?" "Just heading home," Darius replied. "Back to Brookhaven." Brennan narrowed his eyes. "Brookhaven, huh? That's a nice car for someone just heading home. What do you do for a living?" Darius gave a faint smile. "Public service," the officer scoffed. "Public service? Right." He leaned down closer. "Mind stepping out of the vehicle?" Darius's stomach sank, not out of fear but fatigue. He'd heard too many stories like this and lived a few himself before he ever dreamed of holding office. He knew what came next. A roadside lecture, a tone dripping with disrespect, maybe worse. Still, he complied, stepping out calmly, ID and registration in hand. Brennan's tone sharpened. "You fit the description of someone we're looking for. Black male, suit, driving a dark sedan. Sound familiar?" Darius looked at him squarely. "Officer, there are thousands of men who could fit that description. Watch your tone," Brennan snapped, his partner tightening his stance behind Darius. "I said you're acting suspicious." "I'm acting patient," Darius replied, holding out his ID. "You can verify everything you need to know right here." But Brennan didn't take it. Instead, he jabbed a finger toward Darius's chest. "You think just dressing up in a fancy suit makes you different? You think you're above questioning?" "I didn't say that," Darius said evenly, though his jaw clenched. "You stopped me without cause. I'm cooperating. That's all." "Cooperating?" Brennan laughed dryly. "You people always have a story, don't you?" The words hit the air like venom. For a moment, silence hung between them, the kind of silence that screams. Even Miller glanced at his superior, uncertain. Darius finally extended his hand again, firm, unshaken. "Then do your job, officer. Check my identity." Brennan snatched the ID from him with a smirk that froze the second his eyes dropped to the printed words. "Name: Darius Cole. Title: Mayor, City of Brookhaven." The officer's mouth parted slightly. This isn't real," he stammered. "It's very real," Darius said quietly, his tone now cutting through the hot air. "And as an elected official, I expect professionalism from those sworn to serve this city, including me." Miller leaned over, eyes widening as he read the ID himself. The realization hit both officers like a tidal wave. They'd just profiled their own mayor. The arrogance drained from Brennan's face, replaced by a pale shade of panic. His posture stiffened, voice suddenly polite. "Mr. Mayor, sir, there must have been a misunderstanding." "Was there?" Darius asked, not raising his voice, but his words carried enough power to silence the highway noise itself. "Or was it a judgment call, based on how I look?" Brennan swallowed hard, unable to meet his gaze. "Sir, if you'd just give me a moment to—" "No," Darius interrupted, his tone measured. "You've had plenty of moments. I gave you respect from the start. I gave you my ID. You gave me suspicion for a long moment. No one moved." The sound of the patrol car's radio buzzed faintly in the background. Finally, Darius stepped forward, reclaiming his ID from Brennan's trembling hand. "Next time, Sergeant," he said firmly, "remember that authority doesn't give you the right to assume guilt. It gives you the responsibility to protect dignity." Then, without waiting for a response, he walked back to his car, straightened his jacket, and drove off, leaving the two officers frozen in disbelief beside the flashing lights. Miller finally broke the silence. "What do we do now?" Brennan's voice was barely a whisper. "We just pulled over the mayor." The realization hung heavy between them, and for the first time in years, Brennan felt what accountability truly looked like. Sergeant Brennan didn't sleep that night. He sat in his small, dimly lit apartment, staring at the blinking cursor on his incident report. Every time he tried to type, the image of Darius Cole's ID, Mayor, City of Brookhaven, flashed before his eyes like a warning light. The words he'd said replayed in his head on an endless loop. "You people always have a story, don't you?" He rubbed his temples and muttered, "What have I done?" Across town, in the quiet elegance of the Brookhaven mayor's residence, Darius Cole sat on his balcony with a glass of water in his hand. The city lights stretched below him, glittering like a restless ocean. He wasn't angry. He was tired. Tired of explaining, tired of proving, tired of being treated like a suspect in the very city he governed. But he knew something had to change. At dawn, the city's communication lines buzzed with whispers. By noon, news had already begun to spread. A civilian had recorded part of the traffic stop on their dashcam. The footage wasn't long, but it was clear. An officer raising his voice, the mayor calmly holding out his ID, and the sudden silence when they realized who he was. The clip hit social media like a thunderstorm. #RespectTheBadge trended for a few minutes, but #RespectTheMayor soon overtook it. By the time Brennan and Officer Miller reported for duty, the precinct was in chaos. Reporters were gathering outside, microphones ready. The chief secretary looked pale as she whispered, "The mayor called. He wants a meeting. Today." Brennan's stomach twisted. "With us?" "With the entire department," she said quietly. The briefing room at City Hall was packed. Dozens of officers filled the seats, some whispering nervously, others pretending to be indifferent. Darius Cole stood at the front, wearing the same blue suit from the day before, this time with the City of Brookhaven pin gleaming on his lapel. His presence commanded the room before he even spoke. When he finally did, the silence was absolute. "I called this meeting," Darius began, his voice calm but sharp, "because yesterday something happened on Highway 19 that should never happen in this city. Not to anyone." Brennan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I was stopped without cause," Darius continued, "accused of being suspicious, spoken to in a way that no citizen should be. I want to make something clear. This is not about me being the mayor. This is about me being a man in a city that claims to value justice." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A few officers lowered their eyes. Darius held up his ID, the same one he'd handed Brennan. "This little piece of plastic didn't change who I was yesterday. It only changed how I was treated. And that," he said, voice tightening, "is the real problem." Chief Alvarez, a tall woman with decades in service, stepped forward. "Mr. Mayor, on behalf of the department—" Darius raised a hand. "Chief, I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for accountability. I know not every officer wears bias on their badge, but it's time we stop pretending it doesn't exist." His words cut through the air like lightning. The room felt smaller now, filled with the weight of truth. He looked directly at Brennan and Miller, seated near the back. "Gentlemen, I believe both of you are present." Brennan's throat went dry. He stood slowly. "Yes, sir. Do you remember what you said to me?" Darius asked. "Yes, sir," Brennan replied, voice trembling slightly. "I do, and I deeply regret—" "I don't need your regret," Darius interrupted softly. "I need your honesty." Brennan swallowed hard. "I assumed you were someone else. I profiled you. I let bias cloud judgment, and that's on me." The admission landed heavily in the room. Darius nodded. "That's the first step, acknowledging it. Because the next time you stop someone who looks like me, they might not be a mayor. They might be a father, a teacher, or a kid on his way to school. And they deserve the same respect you'd give anyone else." The room was silent again, but this time it was thoughtful. Even the officers who'd rolled their eyes at news reports were listening now. Chief Alvarez stepped forward. "Mr. Mayor, I will personally ensure that a full bias training initiative begins immediately. Every officer, every rank." "Good," Darius said, his expression softening. "Because this city deserves better from all of us." As he turned to leave, Brennan spoke again, his voice small but sincere. "Mr. Mayor, thank you for not pressing charges." Darius paused at the doorway. "Sergeant, I'm not interested in ruining careers. I'm interested in changing hearts." He gave a small nod and walked out, the sound of his footsteps echoing through the hall like a new beginning. Outside, reporters waited eagerly, But Darius didn't stop to speak. He looked toward the skyline of Brookhaven, the city he'd sworn to protect, and whispered to himself, maybe this time they'll finally see the man behind the suit. Inside the hall, Brennan sat down slowly, his badge feeling heavier than ever. For the first time in his career, he didn't feel like a cop. He felt like a student, one who'd just learned the hardest lesson of all: power means nothing without respect. By morning, Brookhaven was no longer just a city, it was a headline. Every major news outlet carried the same story: police stop mayor in alleged racial profiling incident. The video, barely 30 seconds long, had been shared millions of times. It played on repeat: the officer's aggressive stance, the calm voice of Darius Cole, and then that frozen moment when the word mayor appeared. Comment sections were ablaze. Finally, someone caught it on camera. Respect that man's composure, proof that power doesn't protect you from prejudice. And of course, the other side: don't make it about race. Maybe the officer was just doing his job. He looked suspicious. End of story. The city was split in half. Mayor Darius Cole didn't care about the noise. He had a mission. He met with community leaders, clergy, activists, and even police union reps, not to argue, but to listen. In every meeting, he repeated the same words: this isn't about punishing officers. It's about rebuilding trust. Still, he knew the storm was far from over. At the precinct, Sergeant Brennan's badge sat on his desk, untouched. The official investigation was underway. Internal Affairs had already interviewed him twice, and he knew more was coming. He'd spent the last few nights replaying the footage over and over, barely recognizing the man barking at the mayor. The arrogance, the tone, the assumptions, it was all there, unfiltered. Officer Miller, quieter and younger, sat across from him, fidgeting with a coffee cup. "They're saying we might get suspended," he murmured. Brennan didn't answer right away. "Maybe we should," he finally said. "Maybe we need it." Miller looked at him, confused. "You think we deserve that?" Brennan sighed. "When I joined the force, I thought wearing this badge meant I was serving justice. But yesterday made me realize I'd been serving ego. Maybe I needed to be humbled." The precinct doors opened, and Chief Alvarez stepped in, her tone clipped but controlled. "Sergeant Brennan, Officer Miller, the mayor's office just called. He's hosting a public forum tonight. Both of you are expected to attend." Miller blinked. "Us? In public?" "Yes," she said. "The mayor believes in transparency. He wants everyone to hear this conversation, unedited." By evening, Brookhaven City Hall looked like the center of the world. Television cameras lined the steps. Reporters crowded the sidewalk. Inside, every seat in the council chamber was taken. The air was thick with curiosity and tension. When Darius Cole entered, the crowd rose, some applauding, others watching in silence. He took the podium, looking composed, but the steel in his eyes was unmistakable. "Last week," he began, "2 officers stopped a man they believed was suspicious. That man was me." A hush fell over the audience. "I stand here not as your mayor," he continued, "but as one of many who have faced judgment before understanding. What happened to me wasn't unique. It just happened to be recorded." He paused, letting the truth settle. "But the difference between anger and change is what we do next." He gestured toward the side of the stage, where Brennan and Miller stepped forward, faces solemn. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Brennan approached the microphone. His voice, once commanding, was now humble. "I'm not proud of what I said. I disrespected a man who deserved better, and I did it because I assumed the worst without cause. I've been on this job for 20 years and I thought I'd seen everything, but I hadn't seen myself clearly until that video." He turned toward Darius. "You could have ended my career, sir. Instead, you gave me a chance to face what I've ignored. I owe you, and this city, an apology." For a few seconds, the room was silent. Then someone began to clap. Another joined. Soon the chamber filled with applause, not loud or wild, but steady and sincere. Darius stepped forward and shook Brennan's hand. "Acknowledgement is the first step," he said. "Now let's take the next one together." Outside, the media erupted. Headlines shifted again that night. Mayor Cole forgives officer in viral stop, turns anger into reform. From confrontation to conversation, Brookhaven takes the lead. But not everyone was cheering. In the shadows of the online world, threads began to appear, twisting the narrative. This was staged. He used his position for publicity. Real victims don't get meetings, they get mugshots, and behind those posts were voices with influence, people who didn't want to see change, who preferred division. Darius knew it was coming. Progress never came without pushback, but what he didn't know yet was that someone inside City Hall was working to undermine him. A secret that would soon turn this story from a lesson in justice into a battle for truth itself. Later that night, as he walked back to his car, he saw the familiar glint of red and blue in his peripheral vision, another patrol unit parked nearby. For a split second his heart skipped, but this time the officer inside stepped out, saluted, and said, "Evening, Mayor. Just keeping an eye on your safety tonight." Darius smiled faintly. "Appreciate that, officer." As he drove away, the city lights reflected off his windshield, bright, hopeful, and fragile. He knew this was only the beginning of something bigger. The stop on Highway 19 had started a fire, and the whole nation was about to feel its heat. For days after the public forum, Brookhaven felt different. The conversations in coffee shops, barber shops, and boardrooms were no longer just about the traffic stop. They were about what it meant. For the first time, people were questioning not just one officer's actions, but the system that made such actions feel ordinary. Mayor Darius Cole had ignited something powerful, but he also knew that fire, if not controlled, could burn him too. One evening, as he sat in his office overlooking City Square, his chief of staff, Angela Porter, rushed in holding a brown folder. Her face was tense. "You need to see this, Darius." He turned, eyebrows raised. "What is it?" She placed the folder on his desk. "Anonymous email. Came to my inbox this morning. It's a report, an internal memo from someone in the police union." Darius opened it, scanning quickly, his expression darkened. "They're planning to file a vote of no confidence against me." Angela nodded grimly. "They're saying you embarrassed the department, turned the city against law enforcement. They're calling you anti-police." Darius leaned back, exhaling slowly. He wasn't surprised. Disappointed, yes, but not surprised. "So, some people still don't get it," he murmured. "This was never about being anti-police, it was about being pro-accountability." Angela looked at him earnestly. "We can fight it, but you'll need allies." Darius smiled faintly. "Then it's time I call on one." The next morning, Sergeant Brennan stood outside City Hall, unsure if he should go in. He'd spent nights thinking about the forum, how the mayor could have humiliated him but chose grace instead. When his phone rang, he was startled to see the caller ID, Mayor Darius Cole. "Sergeant Brennan," Darius said when he answered. "I need your help." Brennan blinked. "My help, sir?" "Yes. There's something happening inside the department. A faction trying to discredit the reform we started. I need someone who understands both sides." Brennan hesitated. "Sir, after what I did—" "That's exactly why I'm calling you," Darius interrupted. "Because you've seen the problem up close, and you're willing to change." For a moment, Brennan didn't speak. Then he straightened his shoulders. "Tell me what you need." That evening, a private meeting was held at City Hall. Darius, Angela, Brennan, and Chief Alvarez gathered around a long oak table. Documents were spread everywhere. Screenshots, internal memos, and messages revealing a plan by a few senior officers to undermine the mayor's leadership. "This isn't just a union issue," Chief Alvarez said sternly. "They've been feeding misinformation to a local news blog. They want to frame your reforms as a political stunt." Darius folded his hands. "Then we'll respond with transparency." Angela frowned. "How?" He looked up, eyes calm but fierce. "We don't hide the story. We own it." The next morning, Brookhaven woke up to a press conference unlike any other. Cameras clicked, microphones crowded the podium, and every major outlet tuned in. Mayor Darius Cole stood front and center with Chief Alvarez and Sergeant Brennan by his side, the same officer who had once accused him of being suspicious. "Good morning, Brookhaven," Darius began, his tone steady. "A few days ago I stood here to address a moment of injustice. Today I stand to address something deeper, the truth." He paused, scanning the crowd. "There are those who want to divide us, to pit community against police, truth against tradition, black against blue. But Brookhaven deserves better than fear. It deserves honesty." He turned slightly, gesturing toward Brennan. "This man standing beside me made a mistake, but he also made a choice, to learn, to change, and to serve differently. That's what real courage looks like." Brennan nodded, his face solemn. "For years, I believed authority was enough to earn respect. I was wrong. It's empathy that earns respect, and today I'm recommitting myself to that truth, starting with how I lead my team." The crowd murmured approvingly. Chief Alvarez stepped forward next. "We're launching a new initiative, one that both the mayor and our department will oversee. It's called Project Blue Bridge. Officers and citizens will train, learn, and rebuild together. No scripts, no politics, just people." Applause erupted through the crowd. Even the reporters, used to cynicism, seemed caught off guard by the unity before them. Then Darius delivered the final blow, not against anyone but for everyone. "You see," he said, voice deep with conviction, "when that officer stopped me on Highway 19, I could have responded with anger. But anger doesn't heal. Truth does. And truth is this: authority without compassion is oppression. But compassion with authority, that's leadership." He stepped back from the podium. The audience rose to their feet, the applause swelling like a wave. Later that evening, as the city lights glimmered once more, Darius stood on the steps of City Hall. Brennan approached quietly beside him. "Sir," Brennan said softly, "you could have destroyed me. Instead, you gave me purpose again. I'll spend the rest of my career making it right." Darius smiled. "Then it was worth it." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the streets fill with people, officers and civilians walking side by side after the conference. For the first time in a long while, Brookhaven felt like a city united. As Darius looked up at the glowing skyline, he whispered, "Maybe justice isn't about power after all. Maybe it's about reflection and the courage to change." Behind him, the faint echo of sirens blended with the hum of city life, not as a symbol of fear, but as a promise of protection renewed.